Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to all of you, my dear students. I would like to say Pakhair, Salam, Khush Amdeed, and Kya Halat Sanda, Razio, Tarakrevandeo. And the purpose of saying and greeting you in this way is to acknowledge that all of you are starting from, of course, the students of Wah and Aptabad, Islamabad, Atak, Lahore, Sahiwal, Vihari. So you all are part of this journey, and I would like to welcome you all. Even I am very proud to be playing this role of an instructor, and especially in this new mode of hybrid learning. It's our first experience, your experience as well. So I want to make sure that it should count. So with that, I would like to move ahead right after this brief welcoming. You'll be wondering who is this person in front of our screen, so let me introduce myself. My name, my dear students, is Anmol Ahmed, and I became part of this family of ComSets in the year 2013, after completing my master's basically, from National University of Modern Languages. That was the time, if I just refer back, my early schooling is from Islamabad College for Boys, located in sector G63. And referring and coming back to the point that I wanted to mention, that during my master's basically, having this background of sciences as well, I was wondering, couldn't there be a way in which I can just take these two domains together? I mean arts and sciences together. While I was wondering and looking for the answer, I came across this discipline of linguistics within my master's, and I developed such an interest that I just took the admission in Air University, and I also completed my thesis, my dissertation in applied linguistics. And after that, I am looking forward to do my doctoral studies as well within the same domain, within that same area. But in the meanwhile, we need to have this interaction through this mode of hybrid learning as well. So with that, now, you'll be wondering how you can introduce yourself to me. Well, there are multiple modes. As through this hybrid learning, you are going to have a moderator of your respective campuses. That moderator also has all the expertise of this subject and who will be there to guide you and help you in every possible way. And in addition, if you want to reach me, so the moderator is going to play the part. Anything that you would like to share and discuss with me, you're most welcome to share that with him and her, and it will directly come towards me, and I will be giving you all the feedback as well with respect to it. Now, if we move ahead, so any kind of introduction is of course most welcome. But how are we going to move ahead? Because the course that we'll be studying is report writing skills, and it has the course code of HUM 102. This is the course code. Now this course has been designed in such a way that there are certain objectives which have to be met, and after going through this journey we're going to have an outcome. What's that outcome? It's directly based on the objectives. To make you well aware of all the different forms of occupational writings, professional writing, and the most important, because of which this course has been named as report writing skills, that you should know how to write a report. That's the basic purpose. And in order to understand its structure, its comparison with all the other different forms of technical writing is also very much important. And that is why that is going to be the part of this journey as well. You'll come across the different samples, the different examples of all the other forms of writing as well, so that you are able to differentiate, you can find the similarities, and you can also find the differences, so that when the time comes of you writing something, or whenever a task is assigned to you, whenever a question is given to you with respect to it, so you're able to handle it, because you'll know all the minor things as well. So now, starting from the awareness of the report writing, the professional writing, what are the different modes? In addition to that, the time will come while we are moving in this journey, when you will be assigned the task of writing your own report as well. It will be like a project report. And for that project report, you require a research. So you'll be made to develop that skill of conducting research as well, because that research will help you to collect data, and right after its analysis, you will know how to write it, because that is also part of the journey that will be giving you the awareness of documenting each and every source that you are simply reading, and you have to basically cite it as well within your report. So that documentation, the making of a bibliography, that is also a very important part. And moving ahead, then the stage of presenting it is also very much important, and you have to do it as well. But you'll be wondering, don't you think we require some guidance with respect to the presentation skills? So of course you'll be getting all those tips of becoming a good presenter as well. That is also a very important part of our hybrid mode of learning, and especially this course of report writing skills. So you'll be taught how to become a very good and an efficient presenter as well. But with that, it's not the end of the story, because the purpose, the ultimate goal is to make you a successful professional. And for that, you of course have to look for the vacancies. There are two modes, of course. You search for the vacancy, or there is always like a career expo in which people from different companies come to your university to select those ideal candidates who meet their criteria, and they pick you up, take you away, and you start working. But the other way is, of course, that you search for the target place, then you want to show your interest, so you need some document through which you are able to reflect yourself. So I'm referring exactly towards curriculum vitae and resume, and you'll be made to learn all those minor things which separate these two apart, because there are things which are different and there are things which are similar as well. So we'll be going through them as well. And right afterwards, like you have submitted your CV to some organization, and let's suppose you get a call after a few days that your interview has been scheduled on Monday, be there on time. So you'll be surprised and will saying, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I'm a little bit nervous. I haven't prepared for anything. So that is the key, where you need a lecture on the set of interview skills who's going to simply transform you into a very good interviewee. So in front of the interviewer, whenever they're going to put a question in front of you, you'll be able to answer it back, because we'll be giving you a set of questions and some certain situations. We'll be discussing the different types of interviews which exist, because generally we think that interview is just an interview, but that is not the case. There are very different types of interviews based on the kind of job for which you're applying and the different stages through which you are going towards the place where you want to go. So with that, there will be one portion that, let's suppose you have joined a place, you have started working, but there are certain things which act as a barrier to your professional communication, your effective communication. So you'll be made to learn those communication barriers which act like an obstacle coming in your way. It could be social, psychological, cultural. They are of different types. So we'll be going through those different types of barriers as well. That is also a very important part of our course. You'll be looking at those components to the outline as well, but this is basically the place where we are trying to have our very first meeting, our very first talk. So that's why I want to make it count, and just to tell you all about that we are going to study. And if I am not missing it, when I refer towards telling you about the report writing, it's all about that we'll be discussing its structure in detail, its type in detail, and then when the time comes that you start to think that, when am I going to take a start of report writing? So at that time, you're going to get lectures on the basic foundation of writing, because report writing is part of the technical writing, but for that first you need the writing skills, and writing skills would come from an awareness of those three stages which together make you a good writer. I'm referring to the pre-writing, the writing, and post-writing. which are generally ignored but are very much important part if you really want to become a good writer. And that'll be the focus as well. And if we move ahead, you start writing something, you want to make it effective. And how can you make it effective? So that'll be discussed by talking about the 7 C's of communication, which are very much important. Right now I can't just name them on my fingers, but in journal we can talk about the clarity, conciseness, courtesy, concreteness, and there were 3 more as well. So we'll be going through them as well, and we'll be discussing them in detail. You have to apply all these things together, and in addition, just the way as I mentioned that we're going to have the comparison of report with the other forms of technical document as well, like a memorandum, an email, a letter. So you'll see how these are a bit similar and where are some differences as well. So I want you to accompany me in this journey. It's going to be really good, and of course you have to follow it in a way with some key suggestions that I have for you. For example, if you have started like watching my lecture, so it's going to have a good duration. So if you'll continue to watch it, you won't be able to follow me, because of course everyone needs a break. Even if we have a smartphone in our hand, so we just drag things, we move them around, and after a while we just put it aside, because our eyes require rest as well. We need to move around as well to keep ourselves fresh. So same strategy is required here, and I would suggest not to just go for the whole lecture at once, because that won't be possible for you. I want you to simply divide my lecture into chunks. For example, if I'm about to start a new topic, even in the beginning I'll be giving you this exercise as well, that when I'm about to move ahead to the next section, I'll just give you a cue that it's time that you just pause my video, move around, go to your room, just meet with your family, talk with your family, just take a glass of water. If you need to watch TV, just go for it. Want to meet some friends? No worry about it. Then when you're in the mood to listen to the lecture, then return back, and then you'll be able to concentrate as well, because it's not possible to just simply go through that whole lecture in a single sitting. That's not possible. That's why I'm telling you at the very beginning, divide it into chunks and then follow it one by one. You would be able to follow it very easily. Otherwise it can become a little bit troublesome as well. There are some positives, but if you do not follow the keys, it can have some negative as well. But I'm sure you're not going to have any kind of problem. You're good students. You're going to know each and everything if you continue with this journey as well, because in almost each and every lecture you're going to learn something new, something more interesting, provided you are following them very carefully. Now if you are like in a physical class, so it's time for your roll call. And if I start calling your name, of course you can say present, but for each and every one of you, I will simply say that you all are present. And I have simply marked you present, so nothing to worry about it at all. Let's just take a start with our very first lecture, and inshallah, I am very much sure that you'll be having a very good awareness with respect to the structure of a report and its introduction, what is it about. But first, we need to focus basically on the way we're going to move ahead. If we refer to the course outline, the way we're going to follow it, there can be a little bit shifting as well, depending upon the kind of priority that we are giving to these topics. But the way we're going to focus on these is starting from an introduction to report writing, because that is the most important thing. And the course has been named after it, so that's why it has been placed at priority number 1. Its structure, its types, everything will be discussed in detail. Then the basics of writing some good reports, that will go also in line with technical writing and the way you start writing something from the very first, like the pre-writing, the writing, and the post-writing that is going to come afterwards. But these things will be covered as well. Then we'll be giving you in journal a talk about technical communication, what it is, what are its objectives, or you can call them as the traits of technical writing. So that will be an important part as well, and I want you to follow it very carefully as well. Then comes the stage, as I told you, that it will be the time when you'll be getting all those tasks, those assignments, because that is the way hybrid learning moves basically. You'll be getting some great discussion questions, you'll be getting some moderated discussion questions. So if you are following these lectures, you're not going to have an issue because most of your concepts will be very much clear. So you will not have any trouble at all. If we move ahead right after the writing process, there is going to be a lecture. I would say a lecture 1 or lecture 2. It could be 2 lectures, but the purpose of those lectures would be to give you all those skills, all those techniques which are required to become a good presenter. Like we always have this anxiety and fear, how are we going to stand in front of a big audience? Well, you need practice and exercise to deal with everything, and that also counts over here alongside all those strategies and tips that we are going to be discussing within those respective lectures. If we move ahead, just the way as I told you that we'll be discussing some different types of technical documents as well to find some similarities as well as differences when we talked about the structure of a report, when we'll talk about it. So memorandum, email and letter will be discussed, their structure, their format, their types, everything will be discussed. And going in line with the kind of project on which you'll be working, as I mentioned, that it's very much important part of the outcome of going through this whole course that you are able to document and cite all the sources that you are reading to prepare any draft on which you are working. So that citation, that exercise of citation and developing that works cited page and bibliography is also a very important part of this course. And for that we have a section on understanding plagiarism, what it is, because it's like something which is taken like a piece of cake and done by almost everyone. But by everyone I do not mean you, because you people are good and you need to go through this process to first understand what it is and then how to avoid it. So that's where we're going to go through this as well. It's done. If you want to take a break, you can. Right now, just pause my video and you can just take a glass of water before I begin. I'll wait for you. Even 1 glass of water is there for me as well, and I'll take a sip. If you need a glass of water, just take it. Once you're in the mood to start studying, these are the slides that you're going to simply start talking, and we'll take a start with it. But if you need a break, I can wait for it. Otherwise, let's just take a start. Well, I welcome you back from that break that I simply suggested to you to take. If you have taken it, now if you're feeling fresh, now can we take a start? Okay. So this is the very first slide of our lecture number 1, all about what basically is a report. So as the statement simply tells you, a report is basically a structured form of writing. Now structure basically reflects everything, that writing is not just done in a random way. It has to be well organized. It should have a proper sequence. That is the first quality when we talk about the report. And what's the basic thing which simply is like a characteristic of this report? Once this writing is structured and then it's basically used to identify some problem which is basically part of this report, then moving ahead, you examine that problem in detail, and then once you have achieved some findings, you are able to organize them, once again taking you back towards the first point, that is of a structured form of writing. So if you organize your finding and then you present them to your target audience, very simply you can define this as a report. How simple is that? You have already started taking notes, I guess, huh? Well, the slides are there to help you. You'll get all the slides. But still, if you want to take notes, just the way as I can see few of you started already with your ball pens on your laps. You've already started working. Even I can see some of you sitting in your room chairs. Some of you are there on your bed trying to relax and say, okay, how easy it is that a teacher is there in our bedroom teaching us. And this is the cool part of this hybrid learning, and I want you to just own it, that you, being part of ComSets, are able to just experience this new way of learning. So continue with it. If you want to take notes, nothing wrong with it. I'll just return back to where I was, that you basically have this structured form of writing where you identify a problem, then you examine that problem, as a result of which you get some results, you organize it. In that structured form of writing, you get a report. Let's move ahead to cover some other parts as well to see what's basically there within this report. When we say that it's a structured form of writing, so we refer to this fact that you basically structure it with some headings. It's not just about the sequence. You basically give it that sequence using the headings. Now, if you just think of the way you answer the questions, you have been answering questions within your school days, early school days, you come to college. So you are always taught to make your answer presentable. And you have been learning this thing for a purpose. Well, one of the purposes is this as well, that once you enter that professional environment, you are able to present yourself and present your writing in a structured way. And over here, once again, headings are very much important. And that's where it's written over here. You move ahead, what does these heading do? So another thing to know is that if I just put the arrow on the second point, is it basically shows that this structured form of writing has each and every component which is independent. Like if I refer to the basic structure of a report, it begins with the title page, then of course you have executive summary, table of contents, then introduction, then the body, method, results, discussion, conclusion, recommendation. You won't be able to just write them. Rewind back and just reduce the speed, you'll be able to write them down. But the purpose of mentioning all these headings, you can just write them afterwards. Purpose is that each and every section is independent. Like, for example, there are certain people who are only interested to read the executive summary because they just want to know what is it all about. So that means that this executive summary section, which comes at the very beginning, summary of all the whole report, is the only thing which exists independently as well, that if you write it separately and the person reads it, he or she would be able to know what is it all about. So this is what this point is referring to, that this structured form of writing has independent component sections. Every section is independent of the other. They are related. I'm not saying that it's like a haphazard writing in which these things have been placed together intentionally without any cohesion and coherence. That's not the purpose. I'm just saying that the purpose of placing headings is that it should indicate that this is one section and it is independent of the other. Now a new section is about to take a start with a new heading. That's why you have headings. But I shouldn't take too much time over here. I know that you people are capable enough to understand the point, so let's move ahead. Impartial communication with facts and figures. This is what makes it a report, that it should have these facts and figures. It should be in the form of factual information. It shouldn't be based on fiction. No storytelling, no fictionalization. What you require are facts and figures. These should be there. And that's what's written over here very clearly, that it's an impartial communication. Impartial, because there isn't any biasness within your content. You are just presenting facts as you have collected them, as you have analyzed them, and on the basis of which you are providing the conclusion. That's the thing which should be there within your mind while studying the characteristics of a report. If we move ahead and talk about the expectations, what is basically expected within a report? So when you are talking about its structure, when you are discussing it in journal, well, the first lecture is all about the journal discussion. From the next lecture and onwards, we'll look into the detail of what is it all about and how it is basically structured, what is the format, what is the sequence. We'll be talking about it. But first, what is basically expected to be there within a report? First of all, you require a hypothetical situation. And by that situation, I mean the situation if you are working at a place, or even if you are a student, a situation which is assigned to you by your senior. It can be a teacher, it can be your boss, but they give you a situation, and that situation basically exists as a problem. This point of this problem, remember the word problem that I have just said. This problem is very much important. It should be there because you basically write that report to identify, then analyze, then organize. The three arrows that I just referred back to in past, think of them. So there has to be a problem that you will analyze using a methodology that you have finalized and improved with your teachers. Afterwards, you collect the results, you analyze them, on the basis of which you provide some conclusion and a set of recommendations. So it all begins from that situation, from that problem. It should be there, and that problem, my dear students, is stated in the form of a topic. That's how it all begins. So let's move ahead. Once that topic is defined, you need to have a purpose. Your report should have a purpose as well. That why are you basically doing this? Why are you writing that report? That thing is basically reflected when you structure your report into a proposal. Report can have different purposes. It can be for resolving a problem. It can be related to getting some sort of funding, some grant. You first require this report to get the approval of your boss for carrying out an action. So for that purpose, this report is also structured, and that purpose is basically mentioned over here as well. That reason because of which you are writing that report. If we move ahead, not to take much long, have you noted the points? Those of you who have like already started taking the points, can I move ahead? Okay. So the next thing is that if you connect it with the previous point, it will become even more easier for you to follow. Addressing a client or a manager. A report is not written for yourself. It is always addressed to another person who is your direct addressee, your audience, your target audience. Some cases can be your colleague. In some cases, some of your subordinates. In certain cases and scenarios, your boss, and most probably your seniors, the administration. So for that, you basically structure a report, and to address them, if you have to communicate something to them, you basically write a report. So that is also expected to be there within a report. A topic should be there. There should be a clearly defined purpose, and you need to be addressing someone within your report as well, rather than just stating it all for yourself. Then I think even if I ask you, had you been there, I would have asked you that. What basically is this? A format with headings. So don't you think it's directly related with the point that I just discussed earlier? Imagine and bring that point that I discussed in the very beginning, structured form of writing. So you need to have a clearly defined format, an approved format which is provided to you by your office or by your university, but there has to be a format with headings. Then impartial communication, we talked about it. This is once again the reference. So that's why I discussed it, and now it is being expected to be there if you are the one who is writing the report. There has to be an objective language as well. And one of the outcome of going through the whole course is the research skills. So success would come, and I'm sure that you will be successful with some good research skills. And research skills would develop when you will be well aware of the scientific method, and as we all know, it all begins with some observation. You need to observe the surroundings, especially for identifying the problem. If it's not already provided to you by your seniors, then observing, then analyzing, then applying the methodology and collecting data, then coming up with some results, and then concluding, and then recommendation. That is the sequence, and that will determine the success that you're going to get. I'm about to move towards the next slide, but if you want to take a break, that is the time. Even I will take a sip of water as well, if you are going for a break as well. And even if you are like, that's enough for today. We have to digest it. So you can just simply, put me at a side. I won't harm you. I won't come out to kill you. But the thing is, you need to take a break and then return back once you're feeling fresh. We'll continue from it as well. But I'm about to take a start, whether you return back or not, because I have to finish the task that I've already started working on. So you can just take a break and then return back. I'll welcome you once again. I guess now you're feeling fresh, and am I allowed to move ahead? Okay, let's take a start and move towards the next section, and that is with respect to the purpose. Now, there is first we were talking and referring to the reason because of which you are writing the report. But there is also a reason because of which a report is written. So what's that purpose because of which a report is being written? Let's look at it. Well, the first and the foremost is that you need to provide information. Someone requires information, especially within that professional environment within which a report is generally written. So that is why it has to be structured. Otherwise, you would have communicated anything to anyone within no time, informally. But this reason because of which it has to be kept formal, technical, and all the terms which we are using, it's because of the fact that it has to be used within a professional environment. And whenever an information is required and it has to be placed in written, you basically provide it in the form of a report. So, information, you move ahead, just the way as I told you that when we were talking about a proposal. So, when you require a permission or a consent or a permit from your boss, from your seniors, so for that purpose you basically try to write this report in such a way that you're able to persuade them for getting an approval. So this is also one of the purposes for which a report is generally written. In addition, directly relating with the previous one is that if you are successful, if it's a successful report, if I write it, and if I just call it as a successful report, having all the features of a good report that we are going to see in the upcoming lecture. So in that way, you would be able to influence their thinking, their perspectives of your target audience. And once the thinking has been influenced, what you're going to achieve is the initiation of an action that you really want them to take. So that's the way this cyclical process is very much important when we talk about the purpose of a report. So I believe that now most of you are clear about the point. Now if we move ahead and talk about the significance of report writing, why a report is basically written. So you can just look at the blue line, the way it's written, clearly defining the purpose and the significance, that it's basically a written communication within an organization following a hierarchy. So as I told you that in most of the professional environments, you need to put things in written for communication. And for that basic purpose, report serves the part. And the manner in which this communication takes place is either upward, starting from the lower strata, the employees moving towards the employer, their manager, their directors, their executives, and it can be the downward communication as well, starting from the top, coming towards the bottom. And it can be the third option, of course, the parallel communication, which is all with your colleagues, people of the same level, people of the same rank. So that is the way you should remember that this is the significance. You need to put things in written. Once again, I'm stating the same point, that whenever you are working in a professional environment, learn this thing that everything which is said doesn't count. You need to put things in the form of writing, and for that you need to learn all those technical skills, that structured way of putting things, and that way you would be able to write a good report. But the way this communication takes place for which a report is needed, a report can either be going towards like employer to an employee, employee to an employee, that parallel communication, or an upward communication starting from employee towards the employer. So clear about it? Can we move? When we talk about the relevance of a report, why is it so pertinent? Because of which it is like in every professional environment. You can name the places. Even when I turn on the TV, when I'm even listening to the news, when I'm watching the news, they're always saying that a report has been submitted to this office or this organization. Every time, every place, they have been told to file a report or provide a report with respect to that incident which has taken place. You open up newspaper, so all the incidents are basically being reported. So do you see the significance of this report writing, how it is so important, and especially within a professional environment has the significance at its pinnacle. But looking at the points, means of internal communication. So that's the way this communication takes place within a professional environment, especially for internal communication. Think of all those points: employer to employee, upward, downward, and parallel communication. It also facilitates in decision making and planning, because you'll be getting, if you are at administrative position, you'll be getting the proposals, and you'll be the one who is doing all the decision making and planning. And moving ahead, if you are the one who is gradually rising, getting promoted and going at the top, so you will be the one initiating certain proposals for the success of the organization. So that's the way it facilitates, it helps in the decision making planning, because you simply provide a written account of things, and you provide things in written. Then of course, a third important point, as we discussed earlier, that it all is about disclosing unknown information. You are provided with a problem, and you basically have to analyze it, calculate, and get all the results. So those results are basically coming after your analysis of that problem, which means it wasn't there earlier. So now if it has arisen, if it has come, which means it's an unknown information, so it has been disclosed and it is being submitted and provided in the form of a report. So for that, this report writing is also very much relevant. And of course, for sharing information with the employees, that's the significance of a report as well, which is why these things have been written. So I believe now report looks quite relevant to you, and you will not have any issue when it comes to writing your own report as well. Am I right? You have to prove it actually. When the time comes, you are assigned this task of writing a report, and I'm sure you'll be able to do it the way we're going to explain and learn each and every section the way it is written. But let's move ahead. I just had my break. You didn't notice, but I had a few sips of water, and now once again feel quite fresh, and I am having the energy to move ahead. If you need it, once again, I am reminding you, knock knock. If you need a break, just pause the video, move around. When you feel fresh, return back, we'll take a start. But I'm moving, okay? So let's take a start with the attributes, the characteristics of a report, what it basically has when it comes to writing a report. A report is basically a methodical, well-planned document which outlines and evaluates a subject or problem. So I don't think it requires that much of an explanation, because as I already mentioned to you, it all begins, the journey starts from that identification of a problem. If you have that problem, you will start analyzing it, and on the basis of which results, discussion, conclusion, recommendations. This is basically the point. And why methodical? Because you need to have a clearly defined methodology that you're going to apply. For example, if you need to carry out a survey, so for that survey you need to have a questionnaire. So that is basically a methodology that you're going to use. If you want to collect your data in the form of the interview, so first you need to have some people who are going to be your interviewee, and you need to have a set of questions as well through which you would be able to get all the data that you require. So that's why you require planning. That means it's a well-planned document that you have done all the preparation for it, and you have the appropriate methodology as well for analyzing the subject and problem. Essentially, a report is a short, sharp, concise document which is written for a particular purpose and audience. This understanding of the audience will also come. A little minor reference, there are different types of audience that we'll be discussing: high-tech, low-tech, lay, multicultural, multi-level audience. That will be coming ahead. I will be giving you all the things alongside some examples But the point here is that it has to be short. Short doesn't mean that you miss out any information. It should be concise, it should be complete as well. And over here, I am basically referring to the 7 C's of communication that we are going to see, the way you can apply them in your writing. So it has to be short and should be written with a purpose and for a clearly defined audience. These are the things which should be there, and especially the characteristics of a well-written report. So it basically analyzes the situation, a problem, often making recommendation for future action as well. Does it require any explanation? It's basically for you, especially the ones who are not writing, who just want things to be there and you can just get them printed and prepare for the exam. So points there for you as well. And the one people like me, who just want to write some key points first after going through some material, and then are able to express themselves. So you can just note them down as well, do your exercise. But as I am moving ahead, it's a factual paper and needs to be clear and well structured. So another point, going in line with the way we carried out our earlier discussion. So now, just a quick review. You can see what we have just discussed. Features of a well-written report. Now, the way we have carried out a discussion, even you can do the exercise of writing, thinking and imagining of a problem. Suppose that there is a problem that you want to work on. After identifying, how are you going to express it? So these are the things which should be there. These are the features, this is the criteria, the checklist, and you have to meet it, especially when writing a report. So a clarity of thought should be there. You're clear about the problem that you are working on. That means that there is a clarity of thought within your mind. You're clear about the method that you have to use. You're clear about the way you're going to provide the set of recommendation. This is the clarity of thought. You move ahead, complete and self-explanatory. Nothing is missed out. Comprehensive yet compact, which means that everything is there and everything is complete. Nothing has been missed out. That's why it's like a compact package which is provided to your target audience. Comprehensive, it's complete in every way. And of course, if we talk about the last one, presented in a lucid style, which means that when it comes to its written presentation, the structuring, the heading, the use of bullets, the use of graphs, everything plays its parts. So in addition to that, you basically make it a presentable form of writing, and the next stage, when you have to present your results verbally, standing in front of the audience, well, that skill will be sharpened, it will be developed within the upcoming lecture as well. As I mentioned earlier, that we have a lecture on the presentation skills as well. So just to put a check on all these, we have talked about the clarity of thought. It should be there. It should be complete and self-explanatory. It should be complete and compact, and it should have the proper presentation. And that presentation, right now I'm referring to the written presentation. The one which will come afterwards, as I mentioned, will come afterwards in the upcoming lectures. Let's move ahead. This is basically the section which has been included for you to just understand the basic differences and the similarities which are there between the report as well as the essays. When we talk about the points and the comparative analysis of report and essay, in case of your report is basically used in a business environment. Let me just tick mark it so that you are able to remember on which point I'm there. So on a business setting, you basically use a report. For scientific and technical subjects, a report is also written, because this technical form of writing is basically used for analyzing some scientific problem, and if there is some sort of discovery that you have to present. So for all these purposes, you basically use this structure of a report. And once again, for businesses, goes in line with your environment of a workplace. Over there, you basically use an essay. Talking about the essay, you have been writing essay right from your earlier classes. You were made to write some sort of essay. There were stages in which we were not even sure what we are writing, but we used to do this cram learning. It was part of our early ages, but gradually we started to think, and that is basically the exercise of argumentation, logical reasoning, coming up with some conclusion, some deductive conclusion. You simply deduce certain things and provide them in the form of a conclusion. So for that exercise, you basically have the purpose which is served by an essay. So you do the argumentation, you do the logical reasoning, you provide a set of conclusion. So this is basically the way an essay is structured. So there are certain similarities and certain differences. To make it a bit more easier for you to follow, let's look at the similarities which are there when we talk about a report and an essay. But when the next stage comes, I want you to follow those points very carefully. Even the ones who just want to rely on the slide itself, I want you to at least write few key points for you to remember. We talk about the similarities, so it all begins from the introduction. The body should be there, coming up with all the details which are needed within the body. And then you talk about the conclusion. The conclusion stage also comes. Right afterwards, you require some analytical thinking as well. Why? Because don't you think we had this problem at the very beginning, which is being identified, which is being analyzed. So you would be able to analyze something with this analytical thinking. So your analytical abilities and skills are very much needed and are required when we talk about a report. And same goes for the essay as well, because if you have to argue for something, you need to do that critical thinking as well. You need to analyze certain factors and situations which are there in front of you. And once these situations are there, you would be able to argue and talk about it. You'd be able to do this comparison and contrast and argue about things. So that's why this analytical thinking goes in both places. Moving ahead, the formal style. A style has to be there. There is an order in which things are placed, things are, or sections are sequenced within a report, and same goes for the manner in which you basically write an essay. You cannot write conclusion at the beginning, body at the end, introduction in the center. So that means that there is a sequence as well. Talking about the order, the overall order, in case of an essay, of course, you have the thesis statement which is coming at the very beginning. Then you move ahead with explaining all the points with paragraph, and once again within those paragraph you try to prioritize those paragraphs, the most important place first, and then one which is going in line with the first one and a little less but almost the same and supporting the point which was discussed earlier. And within that paragraph itself, you first provide the topic sentence and then afterwards some supporting details which are like coherent with one another, as well as going in line with the topic sentence as well as your thesis statement. So that's the way you basically can see that there is always a formal style when we are talking about a report and an essay. And in case of writing, the next thing, of course, is careful proofreading. So you require careful proofreading, and this proofreading technique is also coming for you in the upcoming lectures when we'll be talking about the 3 stages of the writing process. I'm not talking about the pre-writing, not writing, but once you are done with something, you basically proofread to identify all the errors if they are there, to remove them and to make it a perfect content. So these are some of the similarities which are also there. And talking about the neat presentation, just the way you can see a little bit of neat presentation of all the points, the way they are coming in front of you. So this presentation within the writing also counts, which is why in case of your report, you have headings, subheadings, bullets for presenting things in the appropriate way. And in case of your essay, you basically have to argue, you have to write about your opinion, you have to come up with some conclusion. So this writing basically is properly presented, because if you're not clear, your writing won't be clear, and that like ambiguous writing is going to reflect that your thought is also not that clear, and that's why the essays are rejected when they do not have that clear thought. So what have we discussed? It has this proper introduction, proper body, conclusion, clear analytical thinking, a clear formal style in both cases. In both cases, you require that proofreading to make it a perfect document, and everything is cross-checked whether it's neatly presented or not. But if we move ahead and talk about some of the key differences, I think someone is getting tired. I can wait for you if you want. If someone's phone is ringing, you can attend it, pause the video, nothing wrong with it. But if you need to take a break, I can wait for it. I have to remind it, but that's the way things are. But we are about to move towards the end. It's almost the end, nothing to worry about. We can just conclude it, and then you are free from this lecture. Just the last section, of course, of the key differences when we talk about a report and its comparison and its contrast with the essay. So in case of a report, it basically presents the information, not an argument, as it was written at the very start when we were, I guess, 2 slides back. Over there, in case of talking about the structure of an essay, I told you logical reasoning, argumentation, and then coming up with a good conclusion. So that is one difference as well. Over here, in case of a report, you have to work on that problem and then provide the results the way you have achieved them. So that's how this information is going to stay as factual, based on facts, rather than you entering that element of subjectivity. Subjectivity has to be kept at its minimum. This is how we define and how we differentiate between the two. So this is one point. Secondly, a report is meant to be scanned quickly by the reader. This is also a very much important point. But, because in case of an essay, your essay is basically structured in which one point directly supports the other, and if you want to follow and get all the information you need to go through that whole story the way it has been written within an essay. Whereas a report is structured in such a way that a person like a boss, for example, who has multiple reports to read, she has to attend different meetings, they have to go at some session, they have some seminar to attend, they have some meeting, and so on. But the point is they have short time. So for that purpose, if they have to see a report the way it has been written, they're going to focus on the executive summary, and that'll give them the idea. If they want to just look at some more important points, they develop the interest and they want to say, okay, this seems quite relevant, let me look at some of the important findings. So the important findings would be stated in a separate section. And even if they are bulleted, how good is that? Everything is being provided within splash of seconds. They can just simply move over to that relevant page in which all the relevant findings are stated in the form of bullets. Don't you think points stated in the form of bullets are quite easy to read compared to the way they are written, the way books are written, or the way an essay is written? Well, you do not have to violate the format. If you are supposed to write an essay, that means that you have to write it in the way it is supposed to be written. Whereas in case of a report, you have the space of presenting your information so that the audience can easily access the information which they are looking for. So that's how you can have a bit of difference between the two. So that's difference number 2, that your report is basically meant to be scanned quickly by the reader, because they look at the executive summary, whole idea, introduction, basic point, purpose, what you have simply studied in order to carry out the literature survey, what was your method, everything stated differently. What were your important findings? What's your conclusion? And what are the bullet points which are clearly giving me the recommendations? So that's the way you get all the information, and that's how you are able to quickly scan that report. The upcoming points are once again that I have stated, what you basically do to make that document accessible. You use numbered headings and subheadings, which are not the case when we talk about an essay. In case of an essay, just as I told you, intro, body, conclusion, everything in detail. Whereas in case of your report, I told you different sections: intro, body, conclusion, recommendation, numbered headings and subheadings. Everything is coming in a sequence. Uses short, concise paragraphs and dot points where applicable. So dot points are the same bullet points that I'm referring to, that if you write them, it's quite easily for the reader to follow those dot points rather than reading things line by line, because that takes a lot of time. Uses graphics wherever possible in the form of tables, graphs and illustration. So that is also a very important component. You have time for preparing a report and you're able to place all the relevant tables, graphs and illustration. You have time for it, you have sufficient space for it, so you're able to place it accordingly. You're able to think of the right place where to fit all these graphs so that they may look presentable, because that counts. Presentation counts. You have to put things where they should be rather than just providing them in a single page, all the tables, all the graphs. That won't look nice. If it fits there, it should be there. If it doesn't, you have to take it to the next page. Moving ahead, the report may need an abstract, sometimes called as an executive summary, especially in those situations in which there is a shortage of time. But the journal format also demands from you to write this executive summary. This is according to the format. So it should be there that you write an executive summary which should come at the beginning. Now over here, there might be a little bit confusion that I have to clarify. When you're actually working on a report, when you are actually writing a report, this executive summary, although it comes at the beginning, but has to be written at the end. Why? You'll be saying, this thing comes at the beginning, how is that possible that you write it at the end? Because this is basically the summary of the whole report that you have written. And once you go through the whole material, you know each and everything, and you would be able to provide the gist of it within that executive summary. That's why it has to be written at the end. But of course, for your boss, for your teachers, because of their shortage of time, it has to be placed at the beginning, because that is the official format of structuring a report. So that's how you can get all the explanation with respect to that point, and I believe you are clear about it. And of course, it's often, and I would say always, followed by recommendation. In your case, you will be made to work on providing some set of recommendation as well in case of your report. So you have to prepare yourself, fasten your seatbelts, because in your case, coming up with some good conclusion won't be the end of the story, but you have to provide a set of recommendation as well. So what have we talked about? This is basically a sample which has been discussed earlier. So that's why this is the sample. Look at it. The way headings are there, you can see quick facts about business, bullet points, the way I talked about, numerical figures, some extra information, business coaching trip. Let's move ahead. Graph, this is the one that I was talking about. Just look at the way information is being provided. Where it fits, information is there. Graph alongside a table. That's how your presentation counts. And that's the way it should be there when it comes to your own report as well. So this is the sample. I believe now you got the idea. And I guess I missed this one. Look at this way. A graph clearly indicating a rise in profit. Yeah. Coaching return on investment. Now you can clearly see the headings are there, the bullet points, headings and subheadings are there, the numerical data is also present, because you'll have the time for collecting all the information and then presenting it as well. So that's the way you present all the data, and at the end, qualities of a good report. With that, you'll be free, and I'll be as well for this session. So there has to be clarity. There should be definition of different concepts which are being used. There should be a careful use of all the terminologies which are there within your report. It should clarify that problem which is being worked on. It should be overall presentable, just the way you have seen the sample. Everything has to be well organized. That data should be included and well presented. It should be short and compact, the way as I told you it should be. Should be based on authentic data. This is once again the reference of facts and figures based on factual information. And it should have that proper citation and bibliography that we are going to learn in the upcoming session as well. And there is a detailed session on plagiarism, what it is, how you can avoid it, what are the different citation styles, like we have talked, and we will be discussing.
Let's have a quick overview of what you have studied today. How are you going to define a report? The first step begins with the identification of a problem, followed by its detailed examination, and finally organizing your report. When writing a report, you need to be sure about its purpose. You should have a clear understanding of why a report is written. A written purpose sentence is essential for your report. This purpose sentence could be written as either a statement or a question. You may either provide information, initiate a discussion, persuade the readers, or influence the audience. If we talk about the characteristics of a report has to be short, and by short, you need limited use of words depending upon the type of the report. Sharpness is to stay to the point when drafting your report. Be concise and brief while composing it. Your report has to be well structured, meaning that the content should be properly organized. It should have independent section, meaning that each section stands on its own. The report has to be comprehensive in terms of subject matter but compact at the same time. A report may identify a problem in your organization, analyze a certain situation, or evaluate a subject matter. There is a sharp contrast between a report and an essay. An essay is generally based on arguments and reasoning. Instead, a report is factual, based on certain facts and figures. In the end of the lecture, we discuss certain qualities of a good report. First, you need to bring clarity in your thoughts. The purpose and idea of your report must be very clear. The content should be properly organized, divided into sections and subsections. Bibliography section comes in the end to provide details of all the cited sources with standard referencing style. It is necessary to include the data in order to make your report reliable and authentic by supporting it with accurate facts and figures.
This brings us to the last slide. I don't think there is a need of reflecting and explaining all the points which are written within these slides. In future, if it's needed, I can refer to these. But the point here is that in addition, we had a very good introduction. Even I enjoyed it, certainly explaining all the points to you, and your feedback will be awaited as well, that you can simply share and forward through your course moderators who will be there to guide you and help you. But in addition, if there is anything that you would like to discuss, most welcome to forward it to the proper channel, and I'll be there to help you and guide you in every possible way. So I imagine you to be there sometime getting bored with all the lecture, its duration, but I almost try to give you all the tips which are needed to follow the lecture, as well as take all the breaks which are needed to have your concentration back. So class dismissed, and I will forward your attendance with the Office of Hybrid Learning, and I'll simply tell them that they were all very much careful, they followed all the lectures, and they are very much interested to listen to all the other lectures which are coming ahead as well. So I enjoyed my session. Thank you very much. If there is anything to discuss, you are most welcome. Take care, and inshallah I will see you in lecture number 2. Assalamu alaikum.